What's up, y'all? I wanted to do a quick video about a book that I read by Lisa Austin, and it's from book one of her three-part series, From Humbled by a Real, the N Word. So, y'all, when I recorded the first book, the review was really long. So I have to really find a way to do my reviews without the video being so long. So I decided to just give you guys a snippet of my favorite part in the entire series, which involves a couple, because let me tell y'all something. The two scenes from this couple, it was everything. So if you want to hear about those two scenes, then keep on watching. So I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of the book and tell you how the characters are connected. So this book surrounds a couple that grew up together and how they grow apart, and when they get older, they do come back together. Now, I love a good friends to lovers story, so I was all in. So the male character that I'm talking about, his name is Diorcy. Now, Diorcy is the cousin to the main female character. Her name is Sage, and he's her cousin on her mom's side. And the female that I'm going to be talking about is the cousin also to the male female character, and she's on her dad's side. So Diorcy, he's a street dude, nice looking, has money. And Cartier, that's the female that I'm going to be talking about. She has a small business. It's doing pretty well. It's, in its infancy. They met a couple years ago, a couple years prior, and they met at like a UPS store because she has her own business. She sells skin products, and so she was at the UPS store, and he was there. They exchanged numbers, and it just so happened that the lead character, her name is Sage, they had a family event, and because they are cousins on both sides of Sage, they were both there. Because even though Cartier is cousins with Sage on Sage's father's side, they're very close. They're cousins. So Sage must have been at a family function where on her mother's side, and Diorcy was there, and because her and Cartier are cool, she attended the function with them. So that's how Diorcy and Cartier, came to know that they were cousins with Sage on both sides. Now, they kicked it a lot, but they weren't boyfriend and girlfriend. She had a guy that, she messed around with here and there, and he was doing his own thing or whatever. So that's how they became connected. Okay. She has a type of mentality that it's like, I don't need anyone financially. And her family, they don't like that, because the females in her family, they are married to guys who take care of them. But she doesn't want to be like that, because she feels like the males in her family, they are controlling, or they can be abusive. So what she does is she puts her guards up when it comes to Diorcy. So although she does like Diorcy, she doesn't really try that hard, because she has a side dude that she messes around with. His name is Jard. Now, her and Jard, they're not a couple. He's a nerd, and he's into IT. He wears khakis, and she just uses him for intimacy. But Diorcy, she likes Diorcy. Diorcy's in the street. She feels like, okay, he's nice looking, like he can have any woman that he wants. So, she uses Jard for her intimacy, and she loves it when she's around Diorcy. Okay, so she gets a text, right? She gets a text message, and it's from Jard, and he's like, what's up? What's up? What you doing? She's like, she rolled her eyes like, oh, okay, I'm not doing nothing. What's up? At the same time, she gets a text message from Diorcy. And I was, she's like, okay, get this text message from Jar. She was like, what's up? What's up? So he was like, you know, what you doing? She was like, look, I ain't doing nothing. He was like, look, I'm in the hood. He was just like, come on to the hood or whatever. You know, have you ate? I want, you know, I can feed you. She was like, well, I can eat. So she gets up, you know, whatever. She goes, you know, put her little lip gloss on. She steps out the car, and he's in the hood, you know, leaned up against his foreign, you know, vehicle or whatever. And you had a little kids in the neighborhood. They're walking up to him, and he's passing out money. And she's just like, and so he, you know, he looks up when he sees her, and he gives her this like this mean mug, and she's like, well, you know, she loves, you know, like a mean man or whatever, whatever. So, you know, she walks over to him, you know, he gets to holding her and groping her, and she's just smiling and stuff, you know, into his, you know, his chest. She don't want the neighborhood to see that, you know, she all in or whatever. And so he was just like, he was like, you know, let's go ahead and take a ride or whatever, you know, take a ride with me or whatever downtown. She was like, okay, cool, bet. So they, you know, they driving, and in the car, Diorcy did ask her. He was just like, so are you, you know, messing around with anybody? And she was like, no, I ain't messing around with anybody. So he gives her the side look, and he's like, all right, or whatever. And she can kind of tell that his energy was like changed or whatever. And she's just like, you know, saying to herself like, you know, like, we ain't even together. You know, he kills me, always asking me these questions. Da, 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 da. Okay. They you know, come downtown or whatever, and they get out, and she notices that, you know, there's a boat there, and it's a nice boat. It's not no any boat. It's a nice boat. And so she's like, oh my God, or whatever. And so, you know, they get on the boat. You have the wait staff there in their little suits or whatever, and they have food laid out, like the seafood laid out, and then they got drinks laid out, and she's like, you know, oh my God. So she kicks off her slides, and, you know, he lays down, and, you know, she lays down, and she's like, oh my God, DRC. She was like, you know, nobody has ever done this for me before. And he was like, yeah, that's because you ain't really messed with a real, you know, and she's like, you know what, DRC, you know what I'm saying? You know what would be better than, you know, all this? And he was like, you know, she's like, you know, boat, you know, sex. He was like, no, you ain't getting none of this, you know, the D word. And he was like, you been effing on old boy, so I'm cool. And she was like, okay, but, you know, I want to F on you or whatever. So he's like, who else you effing? Okay, so before I, you know, go into, you know, finish up, y'all, this scene is everything. And I love me an unhinged man, and I love it when a man, in my books, and I love it when a man checks a woman. And I've read books where a man has checked a woman, but I have never read a book where a man has checked a woman the way he is about to check her. He checked her for about 3 pages. And that's why I'm doing this video. So, okay. Like, who else you effing on, you know, whatever. And so she was like, I ain't messing with nobody. And he's like, I'm straight. Because, see, I like my P word just only for me. And then she was like, says the Negro that's slanging D all around. So she was like, okay, so this what we on? And she's like saying to herself, like, now how the heck did he know about Jar? Because, you know, he's insinuating that he knows that she been, you know, messing with dude. And he was like, I don't be effing on no hoes. He was like, yeah, like when I was young, you know, I had a lot of women, but they was just, you know, just to get off. And he was like, I'm a grown man. He was like, that down there, that don't move me. He was like, what moves me is quality time, positive energy, great combo. He was just like goal sharing. And he was like somebody that's honest. And so he was like, so like when I met you, he was like, I was like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? She a go-getter, she a hustler, she ambitious. He was like, and on top of that, she cute. He was like, but you a liar. He was like, you lie on simple stuff. He was like, what the F you lying for? And he was just like, I know you was in the house effing on old boy. He was like, but it's cool. And he was like, she was like, okay. She was like, okay. Look, Jared is the only one that I'm sleeping with. You know, he's the only one I'm talking to besides you. She was like, and then besides that, you ain't even touch me. And he was like, she was like, so what am I supposed to do? When am I supposed to cut everybody off? And he was like, hell yeah. He was like, I did. He was like, up until last week, he was like, I ain't messing with nobody. He was like, but imagine my surprise when I get to your house. I walk in and you riding dude. He was like, you was so ready to get F, you ain't even lock your door. You ain't even wait on me. He was like, your hot ASS just called up the next Negro. He was like, that's foul, and it was very unladylike. I was like, oh my God. And so she's saying to herself like, oh my God, he saw me, messing with John. And she was like, I'm not gonna say what she said, but basically she was saying to herself like, did he see me doing that nasty stuff that I did to Jar? And they say it in the book, and it is hilarious. And so he was like, after burying my peoples, because his grandmother, she had just passed away, and she was at the repast, with the grandmother. And imagine my surprise after burying my peoples. He said, I just wanted to lay up, under you. He was like, and lay it down. He was like, but it's cool. He was like, I definitely got mad from somebody else. He was like, because you foul. And so she was like, she whispered to herself. She was just like, but we ain't even together. It's just like, and in the book, they don't tell you what he does for her. But baby, this scene, he let her know, because you don't know any of this. This is like the first time they see each other. Girl, he was just like, oh, we not? He was just like, we date, right? And so he was like, let me ask you this. When was the last time you paid your rent? When was the last time you paid your car note? Your light bill? He was like, let me put you up on game. I don't do this because I mess you with you the long way. He's like, I ain't F you because I was trying to build something with you, but you coming like a dude. He was like, you would rather settle for Jard, who don't do, he said the S word, but stress you out. He said, and stress and stretch your P word. And I'm saying all this verbatim because I had to tell y'all verbatim. You would rather, Jard, stretch your P word out rather than close your legs and give the N word, who actually sees a future with you, a shot. He was like, but I'm here to let you know I ain't none of these stuck up family members that they're married to, because her family members, they are married to guys that they do everything for them, and because they do everything for them, the guys, they cheat on them, and like I said, they're controlling, and they're abusive. So he's, thinking that you are trying to please your family to make it seem like you don't need nobody. I got this. I pay my own bills and da-da-da-da. He was like, but you ain't even scared of commitment. He was like, you just want to have one up on your family. He was like, but you ain't proven SHIT, because he was like, but what you don't realize is that you had a N-word that will go hard for you. And he was like, but that's over with. So she's like, when he says it, she's saying to herself like, why would you even bring me here? And I was saying the same thing, like, like you going hard on her, like, why would you bring me here? And so he was like, because I thought you was different. He was like, I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt, but you just played in my face. He was like, yeah, he was like, now, I would have been wrong if I would have put a bullet in that lame a Negro's head, when he saw him, when he saw them, doing the house. He was like, and that would have scarred your A word for life. Girl, he was like, but I'm good on you. He was like, because you out here proving a point, trying to prove a point to your family, and they don't even F with you. So he was like, and because of that, that calls you a blessing. So I was like, oh my God. She was like, F you, F you, Dorsey, F you, Dorsey. And he was like, huh, no. But the next B wheel, he winked at her. Well, he got up because it was laying down. Because when he was talking to her, the book said he was standing over her like he was chastising a child. He got up, he winked at her, and then he grabbed his thing and he walks off. Y'all, this scene was everything. I had to read this scene more than once. I was in the bed like, oh my God, he checked her so bad. It reminded me, I don't know if you guys watch Martin, but it's a scene from Martin with Tommy, and I think he was with Pam, and Martin was telling Tommy to check Pam, and he was like, I'm checking her. Baby, he checked her so bad. I was just like, girl, just get up and leave. Like, yeah, that's embarrassing. I was embarrassed for her. That is the type of checking that you don't even tell your friends. You wait till like years later, maybe you done got married or whatever, or maybe you've been in a relationship with a new guy for like a few years, and you be like, girl, let me tell y'all, I ain't want to let y'all know, but he checked her so bad. And so he gets up or whatever, and she gets on her phone or whatever. She was just like, let me call me up. She was like, let me call me an Uber. I was like, girl, yeah, you doing the right thing. So she, she gets on her phone. She's trying to call her Uber. Girl, this Negro, he on the other side of the boat. He ain't even had the courtesy to come over there and talk to her. He texted her and was just like, I know how you are. Cancel that Uber. He was just like, I brought you here and I'm going to take you home. I was just like, yeah. I would have loved to have been a fly on the windshield in that car, because I know, yeah, the level that he checked up. Okay. Scene 2. So, she's like, okay, bad, fine, whatever. So she's still messing around with Jared. So, they out to dinner with it. So they're, Jared's over there, cutting up his steak, and she's like, oh my God, because I guess he had been complaining about how much money she had been spending. Well, how much money she had been spending on the food that she was ordering. She was just like, look, you brought me out here, like, look, she's like, he over there eating that little steak, you know what I'm saying, with his big buddy, whatever, and I'm gonna order me like a tomahawk or whatever. She was like, cause her meal comes, and it's a big steak, and he was like, Cartier, she's like, look, I'm gonna eat this steak, like, you invited me here, I'm gonna eat this steak. So she over there, eating her food. Unbeknownst to her, Dorsey walks in, and he walks in with a girl. And so, Cartier and Jared, they're like having their banter back and forth. And so Dorsey and the old girl walks over to their table, and Dorsey said to Jared, he was like, this one right here, you need to watch. So she, she turns in her seat, and she looks old girl up, and she looks her down, and she was like, cute. And she turns around and she commences to eat her food or whatever. He was just like, So Dorsey goes in his pocket, and he, drops some hundreds and, puts it on the table. He was like, y'all have dessert. Dessert is on me. He was just like, so before he walks off, he's just like, and you, talking to Cartier, he was like, you go home alone. So he walks off. Now, when he does that, Jared don't say nothing like, dude, like, what that mean? And his girl, the girl that Dorsey with, she ain't say nothing. So, that turns her on, girl. She's like, she turned on, like, her. So she's like, come on, Jared, hurry up with your food. Let's go. Meet me back at my house. And you know what I'm saying? Because she was ready to get it on. And he's like, but dude said, you need to go home alone. He's so whatever. And so she's like, dang, stop you from, paying the bill with his money that he put on the table. And I saw you pocket the rest of the money. Do what I tell you. Meet me at my house. So they go to her house or whatever. And so she on the bed, she ain't got no clothes on. She on the bed, she's laying down. And Jared, he's at the foot of the bed. And, he about to do his thing, whatever. And she's like, whatever. Y'all, Dorsey walks in. She don't see Dorsey walks in, but he walks in and shoots Jared in the head, kills him, okay? So Cardi is like, oh my God, what are you doing? Why would you do that? Oh my God. So she's all hysterical. Because like, dude, he was like, I told you to go home alone. She was like, oh my God, I can't believe you. No. So he grabs her by the leg, pulls her to the end of the bed, picks her up, puts her on the dresser, pulls down his pants, and then he starts having on the dresser. So I'm just like, oh my God. And Jared is on the floor, dead to the world. And he positions himself so that she can't see it. The book tells you that he positions himself so she can't see it. So she's still crying like, oh my God, you could have just told him, you could have told me, and I would have made him leave. And he was like, you bet not cry over him either. And so she's like, whatever. So they doing it or whatever, and she getting all into it, so she liking it and stuff. So when they're done, he reaches over, he grabs his phone, he calls the cleanup people and tells them to come and clean up the body. And so he puts something over her because she was naked, because she was already in the bed naked, when she was with Jared. So he put something over her, whatever. So the cleanup crew come in, they're still standing there, and they say that he positions his body so that she can't see, whatever. And they're in that same position while the cleanup crew is right there. So the cleanup crew, they gone, whatever. So he zips up his pants and he walks out and he leaves, whatever. So she, she putting on her clothes, and so she's like, oh my God, like he put it on me. Like she's like, where you going? And they outside. She's like, where you going? You can't leave me, whatever. So he's just like, it was like, I'm gone. You got me dropping bodies, whatever. And so she was like, whatever. So a furniture truck pulls up and she's looking like, what is that? He was like, look, I messed up your furniture. I called, somebody to bring you some furniture. So go in the house and let them in, which I thought that was like, how quick was that? Like, you just got off the dresser. Okay, anyway, it's a book. But yeah, y'all. So that was the two scenes that I loved from that book. Them scenes were everything. I read book 1, I read book 2, and I read book 3. I'm not going to give a review on those 2 books, but I will, let you guys know that I did enjoy book 1. So definitely check it out. And I'm about to upload a review from the K. Renee book. It's The Night Before Forever. So stick around for more reviews, y'all. Okay.